headquarters at Howard University. Michelle, what do you see?
Hey, Rachel. Well, the crowd here is still large, is still loud, but a little bit more subdued. And the word that I keep hearing, it must be some new phrase that's entered the lexicon, is the idea that people here are nauseously optimistic. Not just cautiously optimistic, but nauseously optimistic.
They are enthusiastic about what those votes are going to say. And they are, as Michelle Norris noted, nauseously optimistic. People are nauseously optimistic. They're clear-eyed. And people within the campaign and then strategists surrounding the campaign have all said to me within the last hour, we have been clear that it was going to be close. Now, folks may not have believed that, given the energy and the momentum, but the campaign itself and the folks specifically very close to the campaign have always been clear that this was going to be a close race. They believe Pennsylvania is still in play, and I do also think that it's my understanding of they have a sense of that the reality is that Georgia is not an option for a win this go round.
Whenever you are feeling down and having a bad day, put this video on and it's sure to give you a laugh by simply just observing the looks of defeat and despair upon feminist faces. This is priceless. Not only for the fact that they was completely wrong about this year's election, but also for the fact that they know they are getting ready to lose their TV shows, their actual job, and the actual company that they work for. Let's get right into it.
Well, I mean, I will say from the raft of undecided voters and just people out in the world that I talked to in battleground states over the course of the last few weeks, everyone's focused on women. Everyone's focused on the gender divide. Everyone, Michael Steele mentioned the quiet vote, the notion that women are going into the booth and pulling a lever that's different from the lever their husbands are pulling. That was a direct appeal from the Harris campaign. But also this phenomenon, and there's a great piece in The Atlantic today by Elizabeth Froning about what wives want and what married women are going to do. Because traditionally married white women have given their votes to Trump in the last two election cycles. Does abortion change that calculation? Are women who are married seeing their fates tied more to women elsewhere? Is this a moment for, I guess, not to be heavy-handed about it, but sisterhood? Can abortion unite women in states where abortion access isn't threatened to the fates and risks faced by women in states where abortion access is threatened? And I think that's a huge question. It's going to, in many ways, maybe even determine the outcome of the election, how women see each other in each other's shoes.
I don't know why they keep reducing everything down to women losing their rights to abortion. Abortion is not a presidential issue. It is a state law issue.
To practice, those undecided voters who are making game time calls want to vote for a winner. And it's, I mean, I really think this is unscientific, yeah. But the last week has been a very good close for Kamala Harris, not a good close for Donald Trump. He hasn't been able to fill the rallies. He's addled. He has racist comedians opening it. Whatever. It's been a trashy week for Donald Trump. It's been a very strong week for Kamala Harris. And if you're sitting there in the line thinking, I want to vote for the person who has a W at the end of their name after this is all over, that's a good thing for Kamala Harris.
Can I just add people, but I feel very good about where we are, that's for sure.
In Wisconsin, 8 college campuses in Wisconsin have 1 to 2 hour lines as of midday. And the campaign is tracking what this means. They're saying that in some of these places, the turnout is already at 100% what the 2020 numbers are. So that means that they're cautiously optimistic.
Change in the characterization of the race in Georgia. It had previously been characterized, the presidential race in Georgia had previously been characterized as too early to call. We're now changing characterization to too close to call. So again, it doesn't mean that we're anywhere closer to a result, but I wanted to get that in while you continue your exposition of why we feel that way.
I'm going to give a couple of everybody take a breath warnings here. Okay. One is DeKalb County is not in Georgia because of the extension of the poll hours. That is such a big county for the Democrats. We don't know what's going to happen in Georgia. I would also just reiterate, I mean, maybe you've also said this, it's like a baby blue state, I'm going to say, and that it has not been blue for a long time. It is a hard state for the Harris team.
Georgia. Just joining us right this second at 8:52:06, and I had to summarize what's going on. No surprises. Yeah, right. Pretty much that's what's happened thus far. There's been no surprising result anywhere, I don't think. Now, that doesn't mean that said the no surprise result for the presidential race will be, it's really tight, we don't know. And that could be true for a very long time.
The turnout thing, to your point.
Friends are saying it's very tight, and they don't want to make predictions, but people are hesitant to say, but they are encouraged. They're encouraged by what they're seeing in Detroit specifically, like in all of the other battleground states, by what they're seeing on the college campuses. Those cities with large college campuses, the college students, their information.
Broad national polling exit polling about Harris's strength among Latino men, and they seem to be breaking for Donald Trump, which is a very big difference from 2020 when they broke for Joe Biden by, I believe, 23 points. They may be breaking for Trump by as many as 10 points. Again, this is early.
Here with a call, NBC News has projected a winner in the presidential race in the great state of Ohio, home state of vice presidential running mate to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is projected to be the winner in the state of Ohio. Again, no surprise there. Ohio used to be like the prototypical swing state, just like Florida. Neither of them considered to be a swing state anymore.
The one place that at least the folks I'm talking to in the campaign are looking outside of the blue wall and paying really close attention to it, and they'll be watching whatever Steve Kornacki does, is the Georgia suburbs, because that is where they're seeing overperformance for Vice President Harris, is in the suburbs of Georgia. And if she overperforms Biden in 2020 in the Georgia suburbs, that is where they see the one place to do sort of a reach state. Because again, Georgia's a reach state. I know it's now got 2 Democratic senators, but it's still a reach state for presidential.
I know we've called it for Trump, Ohio, but the rest of them, everybody's feeling really good about. And I'll tell you one other thing that people are feeling really good about, Rachel, and that is what they're seeing on college campuses. This is going to be big in Pennsylvania. It's going to be big in Michigan. It's going to be big in Wisconsin. And everybody needs to take a deep breath. Those are the 3 states we need. Don't have to have Georgia. Don't have to have North Carolina. We have to have those 3. And they have been surprised. The campaign has been surprised.
I mean, we don't have very many more poll closings, right? We'll have poll closings at 11 and 12 and one at midnight, one at 1 a.m. But we're not watching poll closings essentially for all the news right now. We're watching for any one of these swing states to close in on something called.
Let's be blunt. I think when you watched what Donald Trump did in 2020, what Democrats were fantasizing about was a landslide victory, where he wouldn't be able to peer at a red mirage and falsely claim victory. And so some of what was wanted and desired was a sweep that in a 50-50 country where the final best poll had her +4 nationally really didn't, the data suggested that something that would disallow Donald Trump to claim victory before the results were known, that really wasn't on the table. We live in an evenly divided country, and it creates anxiety, but it also requires patience.
It's also, I think the reason there's so much anxiety is that I think, and I've gotten a fair number of these texts, I'm sure you all are as well, it is fairly shocking. And I don't think it's something that should make us super proud, that despite all of the things that just we've seen in the last 2 weeks, even if you could somehow forget January 6th and an attempted coup to overthrow the country, even if you could forget taking classified documents and hiding them in your bathroom, even if you could set aside, which is very hard to set aside, an adjudication of sexual abuse against a woman, and then 24 other allegations, and Jeffrey Epstein saying was his best friend, and you name it, you just think about just the last 2 weeks and the things that Donald Trump has said into the TV, that people could hear him say and do, the vulgarity in front of families with young children, and the threats to do mass deportation and a violent start to his dictatorship on day 1, and you name it. If all of that gets you half of the votes,
48, 49%.
What does it tell you? I mean, we need to really take a step back and think about what does that say about us.
This black woman right here definitely needs to be stopped. I think she's a bit more scarier than Rachel Maddow. Guys, the delusion and phoniness that these people have is just hard to bear. Like, they are living in a fantasy world. But the look on their faces right now is priceless.
And things are starting, I would say, to come into focus because it's later, but we still have not a single swing state called.
Yeah, one thing I will just say, I'm not trying to be rosy all the time at all, but this always happens on election nights where the bigger cities where Democrats have the bigger share of the vote come in later. And there are a lot of places, Grand Rapids, Michigan, a bigger chunk of Philly, Dane County in Wisconsin. We don't know what they'll be, but we got to wait and see what they are before anybody starts drinking on their couch or whatever they need to do.
They're already doing that.
They already do.
We've got 2 early to call in North Carolina, Arizona, Nevada, and it's 2 close to call in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan.
I mean, blue wall, baby, that was always going to be a blue wall night. And I think that, I tried to speak a little bit to some of the fantasies, right, of a landslide victory that would erase any doubt, that would eradicate, the threat of something drawn out. And that is, I'm so loath to quote Don Rumsfeld with all of you, but I will anyway. I feel like Liz Cheney has made that somewhat acceptable again.
Still not acceptable.
You go to the polls with the country that you have, and the country we have lives in 2 totally separated information ecosystems. Whatever happens, we'll have to really understand the information consumption that young men have and why they think that the economy will be better under Donald Trump when it never was. I think that waiting for these blue wall states to come in because they're so close, because households are divided.
NBC senior contributing editor Michelle Norris. She's at Harris Election Night headquarters at Howard University. Michelle, what do you see?
Hey, Rachel. Well, the crowd here is still large, is still loud, but a little bit more subdued. And the word that I keep hearing, it must be some new phrase that's entered the lexicon, is the idea that people here are nauseously optimistic. Not just cautiously optimistic, but nauseously optimistic. And so people here are watching and they're wondering what's going to happen in Pennsylvania. They're ready for a long, long night. And one of the reasons I've heard also is that they wanted to inject so much joy into the beginning of this is because they knew. That's why they brought the DJ in and the dancing and the line dancing, because they knew that this was going to be a long night and that it was going to be a real nail biter. And it appears that that is exactly what we're looking at right now.
Michelle Norris. They are enthusiastic about what those votes are going to say, and they are, as Michelle Norris noted, nauseously optimistic. People are nauseously optimistic. They're clear-eyed, and people within the campaign and then strategists surrounding the campaign have all said to me within the last hour, we have been clear that it was going to be close. Now, folks may not have believed that given the energy and the momentum, but the campaign itself and the folks specifically very close to the campaign have always been clear that this was going to be a close race. They believe Pennsylvania is still in play, and I do also think that it's my understanding of they have a sense of that the reality is that Georgia is not an option for a win this go round, and North Carolina is not looking like it as well, but folks need to wait and see. Wake County, rest of Mecklenburg County in North Carolina will make a difference. Wisconsin, I will note, folks in Wisconsin say they think it'll be a classic Wisconsin photo finish, but they feel good about where they are.
We'll have an NBC News call in the first one, Joy. North Carolina called for Donald Trump.
Yep, and so it was, it's a state that I think Democrats definitely were reaching for. There was a lot of work to try to turn out the college campuses, which were really thick and really packed, and try to turn out the suburbs. And I think there was a lot of hope because of just the insanity, can we say fairly, of the person who's running for governor in that state, and a thought that, defeating him would also carry Harris in. But in the end, if they didn't make their numbers and essentially exceed the numbers that Joe Biden had in the suburbs, and I think we have to be blunt about why. Black voters came through for Kamala Harris. White women voters did not. That message obviously was not enough to get enough white women to vote for Vice President Harris, a fellow woman. This will be the second opportunity that white women in this country have to change the way that they interact with the patriarchy. And, God bless Shannon Watts, who has tried to have that conversation. But if people aren't receptive to it, and if people vote more, party line or more on race than on gender and on protecting their gender, there's really not much more that you can do but tell people what the risks are and leave it to them to do the right thing.
Steph.
She lost a lot of white women voters when she had too many celebrities up there dancing and twerking. Yeah, these women were not gonna vote for that. Some white women actually respects a man's leadership. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. A lot of white women know their place when a man is in the room, and that's one thing some black women don't understand. Yeah, that message of not telling your policy, not telling things you're going to fix on the economy, just a message of showing up with a bunch of celebrities like Oprah. No, Oprah couldn't save her this time.
For the Harris campaign to offer or do. They delivered a very strong economy, and they put a plan forth for one going forward. And what Donald Trump has offered is only going to worsen the economy.
And also so I was fighting Claire McCaskill about 2 hours ago, but what I'm hearing again, as Steve Kornacki just told us at the big board, there were a number of votes, absentee ballots that came in this latest batch, lots from Philadelphia County. The lead that needs to be insurmounted is not the gap may not be insurmountable, but it may be. Mountable. But they're cautiously optimistic. Now, there's still additional absentee ballots out there. I don't know exactly how many are left out, but I can tell you, I personally don't think that there are enough. And that means if there were not enough, I want to be honest with people, if there are not enough absentee ballots out there to make up the gap that currently exists for the Harris-Wallace campaign, the vice president will not win Pennsylvania. And if she does not win Pennsylvania, Donald Trump then hits 270. Now, Pennsylvania people are saying Allegheny County, that's Pittsburgh, right? The Lehigh Valley, with the Puerto Rican vote, there is still a chance. And then some of these suburbs in the collar counties outside of Philadelphia. But the numbers, the margins, because this is an election about the margins. Yeah. The margins have not been large enough in the state thus far. But again, there's still some votes out there. It's not over till
we are still in it. We've been talking, Claire, about Michigan and Wisconsin, and looking at those two states.
Interrupt my own train of thought to bring you a call. For the second time this evening, NBC News is able to make a projection in a battleground state. NBC News now projects that in the battleground state of Georgia in the presidential race, Donald Trump has prevailed in the presidential race in Georgia. So again, of our swing states, we've got 2 called thus far in Georgia and in North Carolina per NBC News. That puts the electoral map at Donald Trump with 246 electoral votes and Kamala Harris at 189 electoral votes. To make, NBC News can project at this hour, and this is a big one, that the Republican Party will control the United States Senate. Now, what tipped this over, we have eyes on Howard University right now. We can tell you that Vice President Harris is not expected to speak tonight, but we are seeing quite a crowd there, and we are.
I do know that there was a lot of hand-wringing and consternation in her camp about when she should leave, about when she should start to head here. And her victory party, which was in another part of town, at what point they turned off the TV set and just piped up the music because the room was starting to get increasingly somber. So a lot of people here, I haven't had a chance to talk to people who express disappointment. There really is still a lot of people who are holding on to hope, trying hard to hold on to hope. But the numbers, it's hard to do that in the face of a map that really looks like it's presenting a very steep challenge. And a country that at this point is still very divided.
And to be clear, Michelle, NBC News has called 2 of the 7 swing states. They have called Georgia and North Carolina for Donald Trump. They've also called Senate control for the Republican Party. 5 swing states remain to be called. But as you say, the internal map, which we have been following with Steve Kornacki, the wins in Georgia and North Carolina have created the mood that you're describing. The last thing that we have reportable from the Harris campaign, but Trump declares victory, all these things that everybody gamed out. Now, while we're just waiting for the blue wall states to come in and watching the math, sending people home is also like asking people to conserve their emotional energy.
We don't know the outcome yet, but that is not what they are receiving, and they are being told to go home and wait till tomorrow. It's a hard thing to hear. People who have worked across the country because they believed in Joe Biden, and then they're like, we're here for Kamala Harris. We believe in this. We're fighting for democracy. We're fighting for abortion rights. All of those people are also sitting deflated and waiting at this moment, and maybe still hopeful too. But I've been thinking a lot about them as well because it's been quite a 107, 200 days for them as well.
Or been in the United States for any period of time and experienced this country's history and knows it, cannot have believed that it would be easy to elect a woman president, let alone a woman of color. Let's just be clear. And nothing that was true yesterday about how flawlessly this campaign was run is not true now. This really was an historic, flawlessly run campaign. Queen Latifah never endorses anyone. She came out and endorsed.
This woman, Joy Reid, is a straight up feminist. And all they can brag on is the fact that they had a bunch of celebrities. She's sitting here talking about Queen Latifah. A lot of Americans don't know who the hell Queen Latifah is. That was the problem right there. They got a bunch of celebrities together trying to tell people who to vote for. This is a prime example of these people thinking a Democratic vote can be bought with celebrity endorsements.
Flawlessly run campaign. Queen Latifah never endorses anyone. She came out and endorsed. She had every prominent celebrity voice. She had the Taylor Swift, she had the Swifties, she had the Beehive. You could not have run a better campaign in that short period of time. And I think that's still true. And I think that the other piece I think is really important to say to people, because this is where it gets dicey, is that the fact that we now have to wait for more vote to come in, that is how the process works. There is an absentee ballot that needs to come in and that must be counted because those are also legitimate votes. This is where we get into that point where Donald Trump can do the thing Donald Trump does, which is to say, I like where we are right now. And anything that changes that, because there is still a chance that the absentee ballot, that the remaining ballot could change what's happening now. And so we need to be really, I think, vigilant and important in telling people and reminding people that until all the votes are counted and there's an actual call made, we don't have an outcome. And people going home at Howard, my concern would be that it feeds a disinformation, sort of doom loop that could be exploited by those who've been exploiting this campaign. We've had someone maybe with a Russia, VPN or maybe in Russia calling in death threats. And those death threats were going, let's be clear, to minority, black, and indigenous counties. Bomb threats, sorry.
We shall see. I think the Democrats were hoping they'd do so well, they'd expand the map to Texas and Iowa, and they didn't win either of those either. At this point, we've got 2 of the 7 swing states called. They are North Carolina and Georgia, both called for NBC News for Donald Trump. We're still watching the results come in all of the other swing states. We're heading toward a 1 a.m. closing in Alaska. That'll be our last poll closing of the night. Steve, as we're heading toward that, what are you watching? Told us, as Michelle Norris told us, the increasingly somber crowd there told them basically to go home, that Vice President Harris would not be making any remarks tonight. Fawn Hilliard, thank you very much. I would be interrupting you if you had not just concluded your remarks, because NBC News has a projection to make in the presidential contest in the swing state of Pennsylvania. NBC News now projects that presidential contest has been won by Donald Trump. Now, I believe that means that we are at a 266 electoral vote count for Donald Trump. Kamala Harris at 194 electoral votes. So to be clear here, this is the third of the 7 major swing states that have been called. But Georgia and North Carolina and Pennsylvania, as those 3 states, presents it presents an insurmountable future here for Kamala Harris and for the Democratic ticket. In terms of what's going to happen, Chris Hayes, with the projection in Pennsylvania, we pretty much know how this is going to end.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. I think the writing has been on the wall. And, you know, one of the jobs that we all have in the media is to be truthful with people and transparent. We're very transparent about the process that brought us to this point. I'll just say this as we're preparing for Trump to take the stage. You know, Steve was going through the numbers. We have this very funky. It looks possible that Donald Trump might emerge with a popular vote majority when all the votes.
We won't know for a long time.
We won't know for a long time, but this is not outside the realm of possibility. The Electoral College looks strongly in his favor.
Harris. So Donald Trump, at this hour, Donald Trump has 266 electoral votes. Kamala Harris has 204 electoral votes. The speech that Donald Trump just gave was essentially a victory speech. At this point, NBC News has not projected a winner in this race. Obviously, a commanding lead for Donald Trump with victories in the swing states of Georgia and North Carolina and Pennsylvania. But he does not have 270 electoral votes. As I just mentioned, Minnesota has just been called for Kamala Harris, and we continue to watch the still outstanding swing states and a few other non-swing states that remain outstanding. Alex.
I mean, I just say to Donald Trump and the people around him, good luck having Bobby Kennedy as your HHS secretary, an anti-vaxxer running the country 3 years after a deadly pandemic that created mass death that you, Donald Trump, grossly mismanaged. Good luck doubling down on fossil fuels and a fossil fuel economy at the precise moment that the Earth is heating up to historic proportions and monster storms supercharged by climate change are laying waste to red states. Side note, Democrats cannot control the weather. And good luck to you, sir, with your sales tax that's going to raise taxes, a tariff that's going to raise taxes on middle and working class income Americans. Good luck to you with all of it. It feels like the dog that caught the car.
And at this point, Rachel Maddow, Joy Reid, all the head feminists, they got the hell out of there. They left the building. They needed to go get a drink. They was done with it. But none of these rich people are worried about how they're going to feed their kids or how they're going to pay their rent next month. That's just how out of touch the Democratic Party has become. And look, they couldn't even resist it. Everything is, skin color this, abortion this, or gender this. How do they hire these people on these TV networks who literally don't know what they're talking about if the plot thickens or change? Now that they can see Trump winning, there was no production script for what to do next. But that's all I got in this video. You guys drop a comment down below and let me know your favorite part of seeing feminists fall on their face hard. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, like the video. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.